What do you think of this one?
I like it. You are listening to King Pilled Chill Hop. Please do bob your head rhythmically with us as you gradually enter a trance state.
And once you're in this highly suggestible state, we're going to whisper sweet nothings into your ear and have you do all sorts of degrading things.
You're revealing our long-term master plan. Yeah. Gotta kind of puff up that nose a little bit there. That's too good. That's too good. Back it off a little.
Oh, a little too on the nose.
Little too on the nose, yeah. What is up, people? Whoever's listening, whether you're listening live or whether you're on the recording later on, we're glad you could join us.
Glad you're here
for another episode of King Pilled. Honestly, I could just like sit here and just kind of groove out to this.
That's what we should do for the next hour.
Yeah. Have it be like spend an hour of like pre-show intro. Like, when are they actually going to get to the content? No, bro.
This is the content. Chill.
Yeah.
Chill stream.
This is what you need in your life. You need a little cozy trill stream action on Saturday night.
Yeah. You could be out drinking. You could be out smoking. You could be out gooning. But instead, here you are.
Here you are leaning into this parasocial relationship you have with us.
Yeah. And instead of being out there talking to real people, you know, touching grass, as the kids say, we're now going to proceed to tell you that you need to stop leaning into parasocial relationships and get out there and touch grass.
Well, meta does seem to be... Yeah, right. Meta does seem to be the name of the game these days. I was a little bit late getting live here because I was trying to say goodnight to my son. And my son is a creature of habit. So he's still wearing diapers, and he's just doesn't quite want to let go of them yet. So we put a diaper on him so he can go to the bathroom. And when he decides he has to poop, then he has one room in the house. It's his playroom that we've set up. There's one room in the house. He goes in there and he closes the door. And when he's in there pooping, nobody is allowed to disturb him. You can't talk to him. You can't knock on the door. You can't come in. You definitely cannot come in. If you open the door and you try to come in, it is DEFCON 5. Just immediate red alert. So I was like, well, I need to go up and do a show, and you're going to go to bed while I'm doing the show. So I'm going to come say goodnight to you. So I opened the door, and he shrieked and just completely lost his shit. So came over and pushed the door, wouldn't let me walk in. I was like, all right, whatever, good night. And I left, went upstairs. And as I was getting upstairs, I heard him go, Daddy, good night, Daddy. And I was like, nah, kid, you fucked up. You got to wait now. You just wait. So I came upstairs and I was like, all right, I need to go down and say goodnight to him. So I went back down. Well, he'd gone back inside. So he's back in his room in his little area there. I walk up to the door and oh my God, he's already gotten to work. You could smell it coming. Like, I didn't even have to open the door. Just standing next to the door, I could smell it. And so I opened the door and he looked up at me all happy. And then he saw it was me. Apparently he was expecting my wife or something. He saw it was me. And he immediately, no, Daddy, no, go. And I was,
no, don't look at me.
Don't reveal my shame. So I just walked up to him and I went down. So I reached down to because I'm gonna hold his cheeks, hold his cheeks and kiss him on the forehead, say goodnight to him. I put my hands down. He starts wildly swinging at him and saying, no, don't pick me up. I'm like, dude, I'm not trying to pick you up. I'm trying to be warm and affectionate with you. No. All right, whatever. So I just turned around and just left. So at least someday when he's when he's going to his therapy appointment, he'll be able to say, at least my dad came and tried to interact with me. I have got a 3-year-old teenager. All right, let's dial down this here music, even though it's really nice. It's time for us to get serious.
Get real.
We have a real serious topic to discuss today. As you can tell by the title is a serious title. I don't remember what it was. I just remember it was really serious.
Liberalism as the angel of death in a graveyard of ideologies.
Yeah, that's right. So this was this title was a joint effort. It's an absolute banger. This is a joint effort between Cooper and I today, because this afternoon, as we tend to do, we talked on the phone. We talked on the phone for like 4 hours. And we were just kind of musing over a few different thoughts, and kind of stumbled upon, I think, what is a really interesting, I don't know if you call it like a framework or just a way of viewing and interpreting the world. But it was one of these that once we kind of started to unpack it, we were unpacking it more and more. And it was like, oh, wow, there's really something here. I think I just realized that the music is still going, but it's just muted. And that's probably why my browser is freaking out. Okay. Music is off. So yeah. Okay. So trying to think of where to pick this up. So we're talking, I guess the broad context here is the state, you might say something like the state of the modern man on the internet, and more specifically drilling down into the demographic, kind of the like 20 to 35 demographic, somewhere in there, which is young men who have kind of grown up in a world of total meaninglessness. Just everything's falling apart around them. Actually, no, Cooper, you really identify with this demographic very much, the type of guy that we're speaking to here. And I kind of do, but my experience has been a little different, so I sort of understand it, but I don't experience it as much as, or in the same way as you do. So why don't you describe the type of guy that we're, with the stuff that we're going to talk about as we continue through the episode here, the type of guy who we're talking to, or at least talking about.
Well, terminally online, that's one characteristic generally. Not always, but online more than they should be. Disconnected from any like meat space communities. They don't have a tribe, they don't have a family, they don't have a wife, they don't have kids. They don't really have any meaning or purpose. They don't have a whole lot of hope, kind of jaded and cynical. And yeah, that kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. They may have like so they have like little communities that they're a part of online that they've joined up with. They might have Discord servers or a particular, like, I was gonna say X Twitter, but like blank Twitter. So you've got all the different little sort of pseudo communities on Twitter of people who all like to talk about the same thing, and they all follow each other and all interact with each other regularly. But it's a very depersonalized, atomized kind of interaction. Ultimately, it kind of, you can have a lot of activity and a lot of energy and stuff around it, but at the end of the day, it kind of ends up being a little hollow, or maybe even a lot hollow. So you can think of like the guy who, you know, he might have some really active persona on a social media platform, whether it's his Discord server that he's got all of his buddies in or whatever else. But inside, he's really miserable. He just is lonely. He doesn't feel like he's doing anything. He might have a decent job. He might make decent money. He might work at a gas station and be barely making ends meet. Might have a criminal history, might not. Might have a degree, might not. But it's kind of like all of these things. You can be someone who has a degree and someone who doesn't have a degree, and you can feel the same way. You can be someone with a criminal history and someone without a criminal history, and you can feel the same way. So it's like all these things that, like, ostensibly everyone is supposed to supposed to grow up and get a degree. And if you get the degree, then that's going to be the magic pill that solves everything and you're going to be successful and live the American dream. But you've got people who got a degree and they're in the exact same boat as the person who didn't. And maybe they have 50 to 250 grand worth of debt that other person doesn't have, but they both feel the same way. Meaningless, pointless, kind of like they're just sort of sleepwalking through life. They don't have a purpose. On the flip side, you've got like the guys who maybe you grow up and you're like, oh, you should never have a criminal record. You don't go to jail. Don't get yourself a criminal record. Don't do things that tank your credit. Don't do all these things. So then you have the person that does that. They make sure they keep their nose clean. They stay out of jail. They've got good credit. They pay all their bills on time. They've got a stable job. And yet psychologically, they don't feel any different than the deadbeat who got into drugs and got arrested and spent time in jail and has had cars repossessed and whatever. They feel equally despondent, despair.
Despondent. That's a good word for it.
Mm-hmm. So there's this big, all of these, this isn't something that's restricted to just men. We'll get kind of into that a little bit more later, I think. But it is definitely something that is characteristic of a lot of men today. So then
I think that it's characteristic of the generation as a whole, but the way that like the lashing out in response to that manifests differently.
Yeah, right. So with these guys, they wind up in little communities. All of them kind of wind up segmenting themselves off into you have the incels, you have the MGTOWs, you have the red pill guys, you have NRX, you have libertarian, you have anarchist, you have all of these different little sort of pseudo communities that have formed around some sort of common identity. But
pseudo identity.
A pseudo identity, yeah. So then you get this phenomenon where you have these people who ostensibly have lots of friends, lots of connections, lots of social interaction, but it's all parasocial. It's not real interaction. It's not meaningful, substantive interaction. And sometimes you can get a lot of activity around these different things. And it can really feel like you're going somewhere, really feel like you're doing something. But it seems that as you zoom out and as time goes on, it's more and more becoming evident that all these different activities are just cope.
Yep. Screaming into the void.
Right. You've got the guys who are, they have their worldview, their ideology that says, we live in a gynocentric world and the whole system is rigged against us. And so the answer is to sterilize yourselves and jackhammer everything that moves that you can get your hands on. And I mean, I'm kind of parodying their worldview a little bit, but that's where it winds up. The only real praxis is just mindless fucking and then talking to people about how bad the culture is and how much it's rigged against you. There's no actual substance to it. So this common point that brings people together, this source of ostensibly the source of community, is actually an ideology. This is kind of what we were starting to uncover, is that ideology is like a technique for artificially forming communities. In the absence of a community, or in the presence of a community, if you have a community, you don't need an ideology. The only reason you form an ideology is so that you can create a community because you don't have one. Go ahead.
I was just going to give an example of this being like, and to like further illustrate the point that this is cope. When you think of like libertarians is a good example, and I'm picking on libertarians because, that's kind of
where
my
we came from.
That's where we came from. But they're kind of utopia or utopian vision and I'm sure they would argue with this, and actually or whatever, but is a sort of hyper individualized atomistic society. And they make that their identity. They identify with that ideology that, no, this is what I want. I want a hyper individualized atomistic society. When in reality, that's what we have and it sucks. And it's a way of coping with the fact that this is what we have and it's miserable and it sucks.
Mm-hmm. And then you get that guy who is like, I want to live in an atomized, depersonalized society. I want to be an atomized, depersonalized individual. And they begin getting what they want. And they're like, I don't like this. This is terrible. This is awful. But they don't look at the frame of view they're bringing to bear. They say, this is someone else's problem. Somebody else caused this to me. And my problem isn't that I'm atomized and depersonalized. The problem is I'm not atomized and depersonalized enough. The state is forcing itself on me. I don't get to be individualized away from the state enough. Which isn't to say that the state forcing something on them is per se good. It's that their problem with it is the wrong thing.
Yeah, the answer is not like, therefore, oh,
every relationship should be voluntary.
Yeah, or the answer isn't like, oh, the state is forcing this sort of unhealthy community on me. That's true, but the answer is not like, therefore, we just completely dispense with community or state or anything like that altogether.
Right.
No, what you want is a healthy state and a healthy community and a state that fosters healthy community.
Correct. Because so what this is getting at is this fundamental reality about human beings that there is no such thing as an individual. To be a person, for there to be a person presumes other persons. Because this is an example Cooper gave earlier, when he and I were talking earlier. He said, if you're alone on a desert island, you don't have rights. It's incoherent to talk about your rights. In fact, it's incoherent to even talk about you as a you. If you're the only person that exists, there's no such thing as me or you, because me and you each presume the other. Me is another way of saying not you.
Right. Identity
you is another way of saying
relationships.
Right. So you as a human being are never an individual. There is no point at which you ever exist as an individual. In the sense, yes, in a vacuum, in the sense that the liberal ideology wants to establish as fact. It just never happens. When you are born as a son or a daughter or a sister or a brother or a cousin or maybe an aunt or an uncle. You are born as you are born into a relationship that defines you as something more than an individual, more than an atomized unit. So the fundamental unit of humanity is not the individual. The fundamental unit of humanity is the family. Father, mother, child. That's the fundamental unit. Man was created as a man and a woman who then gave birth. And that formed the first fundamental unit of humanity, the family. So how do we get into that? We were talking about young men, disenchanted. Okay, so there's been a lot of different people who have been we're not the first people to observe this phenomenon of the disaffected, nihilist, hedonist, whatever young man. It's been observed ad nauseum. A lot of different people have cropped up with ostensibly their message for those men. Like clearly it's a big market because a lot of high prominent people have tried to message to and target that market.
Yes, it's real.
It's very real.
It's real and it's large.
Yeah. And interestingly, almost everybody who really tries to target this market winds up being becoming kind of a lightning rod. They sort of become a controversial, prominent character. Two of the people that come to mind most readily are Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate. So Jordan Peterson had his message of clean your room. This message was great. It resonated profoundly resonated with tons of people. In fact, if you don't have the Jordan Peterson moment, you don't get the Jonathan Pajot moment, which means you don't get the Lord of Spirits moment. Each of these moments led into the other. But what happened with Jordan Peterson is he came out with that message, but there was something missing from the message. And what that something was became evident retrospectively because of what happened to Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
We could do a lot of shows on just where Jordan Peterson went wrong. Most prominently would be probably being addicted to drugs, which, I mean, hey, I'm not judging the man. I'm just observing the consequences of it. There's being addicted to drugs. There's endorsing and promoting your daughter being like a sex symbol thought leader type in a really bizarre, kind of creepy, weird manner. And then perhaps most prominently, there's getting into bed with the purveyors of basically everything that he spent all of his time fighting against.
Right. So you end up with this, you got these group of guys that you're trying to message to who are black-pilled, and you kind of pull them out of their despondent stupor.
Yeah.
And you take them on this sort of character arc wherein you end up like getting in bed with black pill manufacturers. Like you end the beginning of the story is like this call to action to all the black pillars, and then you end the story just swimming in black pills. Like that's where you are. You're at the factory.
I guess maybe they were actually white pills, but that even adds to the irony because they were white pills that he was swimming in. Yeah, bad joke. Jordan Peterson started out as like one of the most inspirational figures ever, and ultimately became one of the most depressing examples of nihilist self-destruction.
And oddly enough, kind of a fragile masculinity.
Right. Actually, and it's interesting you say that because our day job, so to speak, is
the
fitness
apple
and nutrition.
Juice gave me the worst sense of existential dread.
So we do the fitness and nutrition. We've been studying it for a really long time now, and one of the things that we both came originally from the perspective of like the pro keto, pro carnivore sort of perspective. We both ate that way for long periods of time until we began learning what happens when you starve your body of glucose,
especially men. If
you starve your body of glucose, your body will start creating it, but you're not going to like what happens as a consequence of your body having to try to bootstrap glucose production by shredding your muscle tissue and your organ tissue,
killing your testosterone levels.
Right.
And you wonder why Jordan Peterson, I don't think it's a coincidence that he goes on this, he listens to his Kardashian daughter and goes on this weird carnivore diet, really strict one, for a long period of time. And at the end of that, now he's crying about everything and like one blink away from an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
Because he's probably got the T levels of like a hypogonadal 14-year-old girl. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it happening in real time. You can see if you're on a keto or carnivore diet now, like this is what you have to look forward to.
Yep, give it 8 months.
Uh-huh. Because you're putting yourself into a starvation. Like, yeah, your body can do this. It's amazing the way that our bodies have been created so that when we're starving, we don't just die. Like we have a means of sustaining ourselves and prolonging until we die. But that doesn't mean that you want to like sign yourself up for that state. Like, I mean, I think there's some legitimacy to hormesis, but I also don't think that you should like sit in your car with your like the exhaust pipe with like a hose to the exhaust pipe like into the car and like take it up to the point where you pass out and then open the door real quick and do this like it's not going to be good for your brain. So this is kind of like the metabolic version of that. You're taking yourself up to the edge of starvation and your body's like, oh shit, we're starving. Okay, let's start shredding muscle tissue and organs
And
to
not
ensure
only
we
that,
don't die.
if you're leaning in on lipolysis for energy production, the way that your body liberates fat to burn is by spiking cortisol.
Right.
So you're tanking your testosterone, you're spiking your cortisol, and you're just chronically swimming in stress.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah, no wonder you start crying all the time.
Right. Spiking cortisol is correspondent with spikes in estrogen. So eating a ketogenic diet is eating an estrogenic diet, a pro-estrogenic diet. That's what Jordan Peterson did to himself. I mean, that was really kind of like the least of his worries. Yeah, there was many things that he did to himself, but that definitely contributed to it. I just want to highlight a couple of the comments here. They've been great. Moldy Apple said, not much different than children picking their favorite comic book characters and dressing up as them, except they aren't fighting crime. They're fighting maturation or purpose. There's a reference, I think, to the guys picking all these different internet communities to form parasocial relationships with. That's a good analogy. Like they're sort of like, oh, I'm going to do the Batman ideology. Oh no, I'm going to do the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles ideology, and it's kind of that's exactly what's happening. And then random username says, I demand a virgin wife. Goes around removing virgins from the supply and encouraging others to do the same. In a sentence, that's a good distillation of it. And then this is good too. Zach Putnam, pedos and hedos. So pedos and hedonists. That's good. That's catchy.
I think he said that with respect to the libertarians.
Probably, yeah. We'll get back to the libertarians here in just a minute. And Zach also said a solid floor with one missing plank is just a trip hazard. I like that. So real quick, Zach is the guy who joined me on Adam Patrick's show yesterday. We talked for 3 hours about all kinds of stuff. Filioque, essence, energy distinction, reality being personal, we covered a whole bunch of ground. Did it for 3 hours. It was a great conversation. Adam's already got it posted. So if you go to the Age of Information YouTube channel, or to watch the video, or you can download it on your podcatcher, you can go hear Zach and Adam and I having a great conversation. All right. So libertarians. So obviously both Cooper and I came through this. Part of the reason why we recognize this phenomenon and we can talk about it and pull it apart and look at all the different parts of it is because we've experienced it ourselves. We've come through this, as Cooper was describing it to me earlier, he said he remembers when he first really got into the whole anarchist thing. And one of his big motivations was it gave him a sense of meaning and purpose, to feel like, in part, like feeling like he's smarter than everyone else. And, you're like, well, I've got the answers to solve all of the world's problems. I just need to get enough people to agree with me.
I've got my little pet political theory that nobody else has. So maybe people will find me interesting and smart and stuff like that. You don't, because a lot of young guys, and I'll include myself in this, are just kind of existing, floating. There's no community. I don't know my neighbors, There's no like real sense of community or family for my generation. So because of that, you don't have a really robust sense of identity. So as a sort of proxy, or like you were mentioning earlier, like a sort of technique to try to bootstrap that, you latch onto ideology and make that your identity.
Hmm. So then an ideology is something, as we were talking about, an ideology like libertarianism is this sort of bootstrapping tool for trying to form a community. So if you don't have a community already, if you don't have a tribe that you exist within, because if you exist within a tribe, the bare act of existing within it will give you an identity. It will give you a mission. It will give you a purpose. When you are born as a child, your responsibility, your purpose is to develop into an adult. So you start off as an infant, and your purpose is to develop from an infant into a toddler. And then when you're a toddler, your purpose is to develop from a toddler into a, I don't know, grade schooler, kindergartner, whatever. And then from there to like adolescent, and then to teen, and then to young adult, and then to adult. And then from adult, the next step is to parenthood. From parenthood, the next step is to grandparenthood. And then so on. So at whatever point you are in life, your relationships naturally give you an identity, and having an identity is having a purpose. But if you don't have those relationships, and to have them is not just like a biological reality, it's like an active reality in your life. So you may have siblings that you never talk to and never do anything with. You don't like go to birthday parties, or you just don't have a relationship with them. Then it's as if you don't have siblings. If you have parents, but you don't have a relationship with them, then it's as if you don't have parents. So when we
Identity
say
without like relationship, these things just go hand in hand.
right.
If you don't maintain
So
that relationship, then you kind of lose that aspect of identity, or
right.
that part of your identity kind of gets defined in a negative sense.
Right. So then if you're someone who literally has no family members whatsoever that you know, then someone like that, well, like your purpose is, okay, I need to find a family. I need to create a family because I need to have a tribe. I need to have an identity. I don't have an identity without that. So I need to find that. If you're a man, then your responsibility is I need to create that, because being proactively creative is a masculine duty, to proactively create. If you don't have a family, you have to find one. You have to create one specifically. If you're a woman, then you need to find one. You need to be found by a family. If you're a man, you need to create a family. So, what's up, slow boy? So an ideology like libertarianism then becomes a stand-in for an actual family. People go join with an ideology so that they can give themselves that sense of purpose that they don't otherwise have. They attach themselves onto something that they feel like is bigger than them, because that's what a family is. A family is the thing that you invest in that's bigger than you, where the outcome of the family is greater than the sum of its parts. But in a world where we've lost our relationships, we've started trying to bootstrap them parasocially. This is something that, like, the presence of the internet kind of created this as even to even make this a possibility. This kind of where the internet gives and it takes away. The internet is the thing that has created the context, or the circumstances for the dissolving of tribal bonds, but it's also the one that's given us a capacity for forming tribal bonds in other ways. But those tribal bonds have to be formed. You will have no meaning or no purpose without them. And I think we instinctively know this. People instinctively know this. This is why they go chasing after ideologies, thinking that the ideology is going to provide them with that purpose that they're looking for. Because we all know the feeling of, like, when you get around a bunch of people and you all agree and you all have some kind of common goal and that you're working toward, that's great. You feel it. You can almost tangibly feel the meaning in the air. There's something about it that makes us feel alive. But there's something wrong with all of these different parasocial communities. We, coming through the libertarian community, begin recognizing that. You're like, there's something about this that doesn't work. First, it starts off with just being kind of like, just kind of having little nagging questions or seeing certain problems that, like, you know the academic answer for the problem, but you're like, something about that just isn't right. This isn't grounded. This is all theoretical. But when you try to apply the theory, then things start going wrong.
Right. Everywhere that it starts to like touch down and try to instantiate just produces zombies in death.
Right.
It can't incarnate. A good example of this I just read about today was, there's the kind of libertarian anarchist desire to decriminalize all drug use. And I was watching I was watching like a YouTube short or something like that of some guys walking around. I think it's Vancouver, maybe up in Canada. Don't quote me on that, but one such city that instituted such a policy, and it's just zombies. It's just like people passed out everywhere. Everything's disgusting and trashed. That's not better, than
No.
going to jail or something.
No, right. We talked about this, that like, would you rather libertarians will, freak out, oh, jail is torture and it's awful and you can't do that to people, yada, yada, yada. And we're not saying, no, actually the jails are great and fine and, there's nothing wrong with them. We're saying if you're comparing, you have a person who is addicted to a drug, and if you're going to say the only two options available to us are give him the drug for free or lock him up away from it, which, yeah, okay, obviously there's heroin, he gets in prisons, whatever.
Give him free reign for the drug, to have the drug.
Yeah, just give him the drug for free to do with whatever he wants, or put him somewhere where it's hard to get. Then, yeah, let's put him somewhere where it's hard to get. Because maybe, let's say worst case scenario, we put him in the prison and he gets raped or abused or beaten up or whatever. He's still alive. Whereas the alternative is he commits suicide. Even if you put him into prison and he gets killed in prison, that's better than him being on the street killing himself. It'll be better for his soul if someone else killed him versus him killing himself. But like, you aren't even equipped to make this sort of decision if your guiding principle is something abstract, non-incarnated, built on a negative proposition, which is exactly what liberalism and all of its children are.
Yeah.
And by all of its children, I mean communism, fascism, classical liberalism, libertarianism, anarchism, Petersonism, Tateism, all of these different descendants of the liberal mind virus are all zombies. These aren't real. The communities formed around them are not real communities. They're zombie communities, zombie tribes. Because the organizing principle of that tribe is dead. It has no life. It has no person to it. It's just dead. This is why we titled it Liberalism as the Angel of Death. Because everywhere liberalism goes, because it is it's a dead philosophy. Everywhere it goes, it takes with it death and destruction. It just leaves bodies in its wake.
And if it's not leaving bodies, then it's, you could argue what is worse, that like there's actual dead bodies, or, breakdown of the family, breakdown of the tribe identity, relationship, hope, meaning.
Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't think about this when we made the title, but the graveyard is actually, I was thinking of the graveyard as the dead ideologies, but you could also think of the graveyard as each of these meaningful things that has been corrupted by ideology, that has been turned into an ideology, like an ideology of the family, rather than just having families. So the graveyard is what are the things you just listed off? Family, community, neighbor
Meaning.
relationships, meaning, purpose, truth,
Culture, customs, tradition.
all of these things are liberalism, like invaded them, hollowed them out, and left them withering as a husk.
And you wonder why Zoomers are so schizo. It's because they're wandering around in this graveyard looking for community and meaning and all of these things. And they're just, the only thing they know that brings those things in some sort of way is ideology. Because ideology kind of, like we said, is that technique or that tool that kind of creates this sort of para pseudo community. That's why they're all over the place. Because it's like they're just picking up the bones of this one here and this one here. And they know it doesn't really mean anything because it's dead and they see it's rotting. But I don't know, maybe there's something there that's interesting, or maybe I can kind of take this on to figure out who I am.
Mm-hmm. Like part of the advent,
that's kind of like a phase that the Zoomers go through, and then once they've gone through their political phase, you just see they just don't care about anything. They're like post ideology.
Mm-hmm. The term I used earlier was they're like ideologically a la carte.
Yep.
Because they've watched through the reality of the internet is that it's been very much a it's a revelation. It's a tool of revelation. It's an apocalyptic tool because it shows just how random and arbitrary ideologies are. That ideologies are artificial incarnations that are propped up around arbitrary principles, and they can be whipped up arbitrarily, have a whole bunch of people glom onto them, and then wither away really quickly and easily. You've been able to see this happen in real time really quickly through the internet because of the way the internet is like a force multiplier on human interaction. Before, it might have taken, a lot of the like Protestant offshoot little cultic things that they sprouted up, in like 1900 or something, and they've persisted to this day. If that exact same thing sprouted up 100 years later, it probably wouldn't have lasted for 100 years.
Well, you see now in the age of the internet, a lot of these cultic things are just falling apart.
Right. Yeah. They spring up and then they fall right apart. So you've got this, the narrative in the culture, kind of the narrative voice that we all listen to has been for a long time the voice of the boomers. The boomers have vastly overstayed their welcome. They've according to the pattern of previous generations, the boomers would have faded out of power like 20, 30 years ago. But they've held on and they've persisted. Look at like the president of universities in like the 1800s. Like a university president might be like 32. Be like a young guy. Like I could be a university president. Now, a university president is like 70. If he's in his 50s, he's a young whippersnapper who's like ahead of the curve. So there's this, the boomers have vastly overstayed their stay relative to the other generations. They've basically eaten up the entire governing period of Gen X. The Gen Xers are basically kind of backlogging. They're piling up. This is part of the reason why there's the labor market and all these institutions are becoming so inefficient, because the boomers aren't dying off and allowing people to promote up behind them. So the only way to grow is to expand laterally. So you're getting this bloated, inefficient carcass forming up underneath them. Then you have the Zoomers. So the Zoomers come up listening to all this idealistic boomer prattle about the American dreams and patriotism and GDP and all the stuff they rattle off. And they can watch in real time as all of this stuff is proven just transparently corrupt bullshit that has no bearing to reality. So the way for them, essentially what they're doing is they're walking around this graveyard with all of these like skeleton scarecrows that are trying to pretend that they're real. And they're like, what? Like, how are you possibly, this is why they won't take anything seriously. How would you take this world seriously? How do you find something to invest in? How do you find meaning out of it? So they do the only thing that would really make sense in that scenario. They start pulling off, just grab a leg bone here and grab maybe a jawbone and maybe some hair that's left over, and let's stitch ourselves together some retarded, gangly, goofy-looking god and be like, oh, look at this, we worship the god. Yeah, like, you guys, they're like, oh, you're socialism. Oh, yeah, socialism. Or like capitalism. Yay, let's bow down to capitalism. This is like the meta, ironic kind of nihilistic spirit of the Zoomers, and it's not their fault. This is the world they've been brought up in. They're just doing what they've been trained to. They're like, see, you trained me to worship capitalism. Look, this thing, see, his shirt says capitalism. He's got to be capitalism. Watch, I'm going to worship him. It's like a mockery, an expression of mockery for this fake bullshit
reality.
System. Yeah. It's kind of dark.
Yeah.
What was the analogy you used, Cooper? You said something about like pissing in the Cheerios or something.
I just pissing on the ashes.
Oh yeah, pissing on the ashes. That's what it was. Yeah, that this whatever the worshiping the god is just pissing on the ashes of this dying society. So when we say that Zoomers are ideologically a la carte, that's what we mean. It's like they've been conditioned that you have to have an ideology. So, all right, let's try this one. Let's try this one. Put this one here. Okay, well, it sucks when you mix these two things, so let's try a different thing. Put that in there. Maybe it doesn't suck as much. So they're trying to bootstrap an ideology while also being post-ideological. They recognize the futility of bootstrapping an ideology, yet all they know how to do is bootstrap an ideology. So I guess just keep doing it until something changes.
And keeping in mind that ideology is kind of like this proxy or this tool for like community.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they want. They want to be plugged in and integrated and in relationship with meaning and a family and purpose. And they're just going to keep iterating, and things are just going to get more and more absurd as they just keep iterating on spinning it. Well, what about this one? Let's spin up this community in this particular chat on this Discord server underneath this guy's whatever feed. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got a joke. We'll run with a joke for a little while, and then we'll move on over here, and maybe we'll find community over here.
So they're
really good. They're really good at building really shallow communities.
Is that? Yes.
They just had all the ingredients for making an actual robust tribe.
Yes. So there was an example I gave Cooper earlier today. I was watching this. I was flipping through Reels. I think it was YouTube Shorts or something like that. And I came across this guy that I've seen in the past, but I stopped and watched a little more because I started picking up on this interesting dynamic. So the guy, I can't remember the name of the guy's channel. He's one of these acro people where they do, it's like this really bougie LA thing. They go, like, they all take their, what do you call it? Their mats or their towels or whatever to a park. And then one of them lays down on his or her back. And then the other person climbs on top. And then you do all kinds of like acrobatic stuff and everything. So this guy is kind of just sort of an ordinary looking guy, but he it's a brilliant model that he's put together. So he has hot chicks in like yoga pants and sports bras and stuff he puts their Instagram handle in the description, and then they come and they do acro with him. So he's this guy sitting here with all of these hot chicks in like scantily clad hot chicks, just groping them essentially. He's just groping them constantly. And the comments are hilarious. It's one single meme has completely taken over his comments. And I'm talking thousands of comments. It's the meme of Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, where he goes, he can't keep getting away with this. So clearly what happened is at some point, some guy commented on his videos and said, he can't keep getting away with this. Like referring to him being able to just post videos on the internet of him groping chicks and just get away with it. And someone ran with the joke, and then everybody started running with the joke. So it's like it's become like a meme of a meme that's playing out in meme form. So then one of the videos is him wearing, he's like, I got a GoPro on or whatever. So his camera is like right down here on his chest. So you're kind of getting his view of what he's looking at. And so you see like the chick's cleavage, you see right down her bra, you see like, you're seeing her just straight up in front of you. And so then all the guys are like, oh, he's doing us a solid now. Like what'd they say? He said, now
he's helping us get away with it.
Yeah. What a king. What a king. He's now getting away with helping us get away with it. And this was fascinating to me to watch the way that this has played out, because it's like this emergent community that has formed in this guy's comment section. That's the only place that this exists. And I guarantee the vast majority of these people don't know each other, don't have any clue who it is, what the person, male, female, what they do, where they live, anything like that. They don't even have a direct relationship with him. He doesn't interact with any of the comments, but obviously he's aware of them. So it's like he's created this space that they've now come in and populated with this bizarre little parasocial community built around this one thing that they have in common, which is making jokes about being like incels, essentially. Like, oh, we don't get to touch women, so we get to follow this guy and we worship our leader and we touch women vicariously through him. It's pretty funny. It's entertaining to see, but like to actually take it seriously, this is an example of, and these don't have to necessarily all be Zoomers like generationally, but they have that spirit. This is part of the Zoomer spirit, is to make ironic jokes and then make a joke of the joke and make a joke of the joke of the joke and keep doing this and spontaneously spring up these little pseudo communities. But it's a pseudo community because it's not actually a real community. This community is not doing anything for anyone. There's a place, this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like ethereal or like ephemeral. There's like this ephemeral location, which is the comment sections of this guy's posts. But like, that's not actually a place. It's sort of a place, but it's not actually a place. It's not real. So they have this parasocial relationship with each other and this parasocial relationship with him, but they're not doing anything with it apart from entertaining themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, I mean, in order to sustain something like this, you got to think through, like, these guys probably have notifications on for his videos, or at least they go to his videos so often that they see them constantly so they can build up this joke. And they've got to be like guys going in and commenting over and over and over again on this guy's video, sustaining this little community. So the white pill here is that these guys are really, really good at creating communities. They just don't yet know how to create communities that matter. And I think that's what the future of so eventually, I told Cooper this earlier and he found it kind of a depressing thought. eventually Zoomers are going to be forced to occupy the role of serious people in society. Just as a matter of like, just reality. The boomers are going to die off. Then Gen X is going to die off. Millennials are going to die off. And the Zoomers are going to be the people that have to be the serious people in society. What is that going to look like? I've got to kind of recapture my thoughts here for a minute. So what are you... 2-Bit says, Zoomers are hyper-mimetic. I'm not sure Gerard would approve, but he'd be fascinated. Yeah, that's for sure. The random username says, shows like the Whatever podcast do the same thing. Half-naked women get kicked, and they agree to it in exchange for posting their IG or OnlyFans links. Yeah, it's the same. This is a really... It's a community, but it's not a tribe. Because there isn't... If we can make this differentiation, we can make this kind of arbitrary differentiation here for our purposes. The difference between a community and a tribe. A community you could think of as almost like a crowd. Like it's just like a collection of disconnected individuals. They have something
loosely connected.
Yeah. Sort of just kind of milling. Like there's a bunch of people who are in Times Square. Everyone's in Times Square. They're here to look up and see, oh, cool, the billboards and everything. So like there's a thing that sort of combines them, but they don't really have any connection to each other.
Or like Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah,
Someone's robbing a bank and you're, locked in the back room with all the other people.
Yeah. So you have, there's like this thing that unites you, but it doesn't bind you. In order for it to actually become a tribe, there has to be something real to it. That's not just like passive commentary or just observational entertainment. It has to enter into meat space. It has to change what you do in meat space in a positive way. Zach said, if morality pops up organically, is the effective attack to spin up a voyeuristic Hito milkshake to disarm it? Random says, so then 2-Bit agreed random, but those shows have a shelf life that's quickly coming due. Yeah. Coming due. Yeah. They are coming due because again, this is another thing. It's not real. It's not real. It has a shelf life. It's not going to last. They're not doing anything sustainable. They're capitalizing on the ephemeral spirit of a temporary moment. And I think that phenomenon is going to characterize the next anywhere between 5 and 20 years. We're going to be going through a stage of a lot of instability. Culturally, economically, we already are. But part of the reason for this is all of the mechanics for creating and maintaining stability have all been rooted in this vapid lib boomer worldview that's falling apart, just collapsing all around us. And the boomers can't be arsed to do anything with it because all they're trying to do is hold on to their wealth as long as possible and spend it in whatever ways they need to before they kick the bucket. As a generation, that's their spirit. So you've got this backlog of people coming up behind them who are going to be the new governing authorities when the boomers finally move on. But it's TBD what that's actually going to look like. Because the upcoming generations have different priorities and see the world differently than those who preceded them. So there's going to be a realignment. The way that realignment plays out, I think, that's what's really in question. But if you see it, if you recognize it, if you can see it coming and you can see the players, then I think that gives you the data or whatever that you need to direct where you put your time, effort, and energy to ensure that you're in a better spot at the end of this period of instability than you were at the beginning of it. I think there's an interesting study to be made about what creates awe within a generation being a defining feature of that generation. Yeah, interesting. What creates awe within a generation? Okay, I've been talking for a little while. Do you have any thoughts that have cropped up for you along the way?
Just kind of keeping up here with the chat. I've been thinking about the thing that Tupit just said about awe. And I'm trying to think of, like, okay, maybe I won't speak for my whole generation, but just speaking for myself, what produces awe in me? And I honestly can't think of anything, dude.
Awe. Minder says being based AF creates awe in me.
Yeah. That's us. We're based.
Very based. Exceptionally based. The most based, even. I think the subject of awe is interesting. There's a little diversion, and we'll kind of get back to as a reminder, we're going to talk about the sort of like the path forward and how this affects men versus women, the way that's playing out in the culture right now. Because we've primarily talked about the male side of it, and it's not that women are immune to this. In fact, women are almost are actually in a worse spot than the men are, even if the men might be feeling it more, or even if the men are just the ones who are listening to us. But I wanted to say, with awe, it's like, is awe a really simple emotional experience, or is it a really complex emotional experience?
I would err on the side of simple. I guess it could be both.
Is it something that, like, you kind of have the feel like when you experience awe, it makes you feel like a child? Like, as a child, everything, like, is awesome to you. You know, you could walk out and see a dog, and that's awesome. Or, you know, it starts raining, and that's awesome. Or you splash in a puddle, and that's awesome. Like awe is very easily attainable for children. But it seems like as you get older, you become more jaded, and it's like your awe threshold gets higher.
I'm trying to think. There's very few things that produce awe in me at this point in my life. I get like I don't know if I would call it awe, but it's more like I get like an experience that's kind of like nostalgia for a time when I would have felt awe about this thing. Like, sometimes I'm saying like way too much. I'm a fucking Zoomer, dude.
We still love you.
Like, looking up at being in the upper peninsula of Michigan in the Porcupine Mountains, and you're laying in the field at one of the roadside parks, and there's a clearing in the trees, and you look up and you see the night sky and the stars, just like, wow. I remember as a kid that producing awe. I still like the feeling it produces now, but it's not awe. It's like a memory of the time it was awe. Because it's not awe anymore. I had the awe moment, you know?
Aw. Tubit says
I'm not making
unknown
sense.
It says no, you are. He says unknown potential is key to the feeling. I looked up awe, a feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder. Minder says, isn't it weird that awesome is some of awe, but awful is full of awe? Well, it's funny. Awful used to have a positive connotation. So you might stand before the awful throne of God. Something being awful was it like filled you with awe. So it actually had a positive connotation, and then somehow it's proceeded to, like you say, some of awe. Now when something's awesome, it's kind of some of awe. Maybe that's kind of indicative of like the progression of our psychology, where now the thing that's really cool is the thing that's some of awe, but the thing that's bad is the thing that's awful. We don't want a lot of awe. Please, no, not a lot of awe. I can't handle it. Just give me some of awe. I've said awe so many times that now it's starting to sound weird to me. You ever have that where you like say a word over and over again, and then it's like after you say it 20 times in a row, it starts sounding meaningless. It starts like losing its like say peanut 20 times in a row. Peanut, 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 peanut. I've lost track. It just becomes like meaningless mouth sounds after a little bit. Anyways, this is how I entertain myself.
Back on track.
A feeling of reverential respect mixed with fear and wonder. I mean, clearly, this would be a... 2-Bit says, for example, the internet created great awe for Gen X. Okay, yeah, oh yeah, I see what you're saying here. So the internet was like the thing that... it was like an innovation. There's something here with innovation that when you innovate, you create new untapped potential. So by innovating and creating that new untapped potential, then you create a purpose for people to pursue. It's like you created a new realm that you get to unpack and explore. Just a sec, my little one's here. Hi, dude. Oh, you want to say hi to everyone? I know I said everyone, and you only see one
buddy.
person. I love you, dude. Have a good sleep, okay? Oh, you bonk your head. I'm sorry, big guy. It's past bedtime. Slowway Whiteboard said he's a doll. Yes, he is. He knows it. Yeah, the mullet. He's actually going to get his hair cut here soon, but we're not going to take the mullet off. I won't allow it.
Good.
Yeah, so by innovating, this is interesting. This has made me think of the thing Peter Thiel, that gay guy, the thing that Peter Thiel said, which is that basically since like 1973,
homosexual.
We've stopped innovating in the world of atoms. There's been a lot of innovating in the world of bits, but no innovation in the world of atoms. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that has corresponded. I'm not saying that it's causatory. I think these are two manifestations of the same phenomenon, that people's sense of awe and wonder and meaning and purpose has devolved completely over that same time span.
Yeah, man. I'm just kind of mildly unimpressed with everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every new innovation, like AI. This is a cool little toy, I guess. Play around with like Dolly for a little bit and then get bored.
Yeah, you kind of fiddle with it. Imagine if you introduced Dolly to like someone living in the 70s. It would have, they might have worshipped it. It would have absolutely blown their mind. I mean, there was the point where they had like a computer took up an entire room. And if that computer that took up an entire room could print even like it would have had to just be like print off a pattern, a random pattern. And they would have been like, whoa, if it has like some kind of repeating pattern or something. Now it's just like, oh yeah, I can
like a fractal.
Yeah, fractals. They're like this cool math thing. You get like I open up my phone and I scroll down the timeline and I see like a picture perfect Pixar cover of a bunch of immigrants chasing a chick with a gigantic nose and a Star of David and big tits. And like, but it's like in the design of Pixar art perfectly, like something Pixar produced. And someone just spun this up. I know how someone made it. They just like spun it up and created it, which is spectacular. It should be mind blowing. So, but it's like we live in a world where somehow the most incredible things are mundane to us. Yet there's nothing that's incredible to us. And I think there's a spiritual direction you can take this message, but I think that it's even you don't even have to get that deep to get profound. Because of just how sterile and everything our life is. The purpose of a man is to be creative. The purpose of a man is to produce. And if you don't give him something meaningful to produce, he will produce inanity. Because he can't help but produce.
That's what I've been laughing about. The milk truck Pajeets.
Milk truck Pajeets. I wonder, has Pajeet reached the level of like bannable slur yet? Or does nobody care? They're just like, whatever, they're Indians.
Are they a protected class?
Milk truck just arrived. Yeah. So it's in man's nature to both be relational and creative. And these two things, they go together hand in hand.
A man loves a woman very, very much.
And he creates a baby, which is
like a
kind
little
of like
guy.
a little guy.
Shows up in a basket.
Brought by what? What kind of animal brings
flying
it?
Squirrel.
The flying squirrel, yeah. Oh, shout out Gerby Johnson. Earlier, Cooper said something to me about we keep derailing from trying to get back to the main point. Cooper said something to me earlier about like, imagine Gerby Johnson sitting in the Oval Office. And I was like, it's going to happen eventually. That's what I don't know how you can possibly be pessimistic about the future, given that it's an eventuality that someone like Gerby Johnson is going to be in the Oval Office. Someone, a representative of the fucking Zoomer generation, is going to be president of the United States. It has to happen unless the United States doesn't exist anymore, which I don't think is going to happen in 20 years. So you're going to have a Zoomer president. You're going to have a president who's out there rizzing them up. For real.
On God. No cap.
So we've talked about how this affects men, but honestly, the women are worse off because if you're a man, imagine you're a 25-year-old man, a guy who identifies as an incel. You haven't even gotten a crumb in as long as you can remember, and you don't have any prospects. You're working a dead-end job. You maybe you make decent money, but what are you going to do? Go out and go to the bar and drink and have the whole thing is just not.
You just got to be patient.
Yeah.
Speaking to those guys, you got to be patient.
Yeah.
Because right now, okay, this is how the stats are laid out, okay? The majority of young guys are single. Half that amount is true for the ladies, which means the ladies are dating older men, which just means you got to be patient. Use this time to start a business or whatever, and then like 10, 15 years from now, then you can get one of those ladies because you'll be the older guy. So
Right.
don't worry, there is hope. There is hope.
For the women, it's funny. So you've got these two like categories of people. You've got the hopeless feeling young men who are kind of just, they're just standing there with their dicks in their hands, like, oh, what do I do? There's no women. I don't know where to go. I'm lonely. Like Cooper was telling me that Gerby talked about going to he went to different churches. He like went to an Orthodox church, and like it's just a sausage fest. He just is there as like a bunch of guys just all kind of standing there looking at each other, waiting for a girl to walk through the door. And I've seen this. I've witnessed this.
Yep.
That girl walks through the door and they descend on her like piranhas. The poor chick freaks out and runs.
Yeah.
Which becomes kind of a self-fulfilling.
Like 5 autistic guys just like asking you a bunch of questions.
Asking you if you've ever been to Japan.
Japan be bussin' for real.
No cap. So you've got this group, and then you've got the women who grew up, I don't know what, absent dad or creepy dad or whatever, and you've got all these women who there's like a massive dearth of quality men available to these women. Women are like, where are all the men? Where are all the men at? And the men are like, where are all the women? They're like, just like talking past each other. The thing is, for the women, let's me say this, for the men, you could wait. If you're 25 now, you could take the next 25 years of your life. I'm not saying to do this. I'm saying theoretically you could do this. Take the next 25 years of your life. Just put your head down, take a vow of celibacy, and pour all of that no-fap energy into building companies. Make yourself wealthy, buy assets.
Like all the no-fap energy, like channel that into acquiring like arcane psychic abilities.
Yeah, right. You can make yourself into an absolute unit over the next 25 years, and then you could enter the dating pool and you would be a high-value asset. You would have women of all ages lining up for you. On the flip side, women do not have that luxury. A woman who's 25, who's looking at no prospects currently and no prospects on the horizon, she's been told her entire life that she needs to get a job, get a degree, get a job, be an independent woman, work for herself, support herself, yada, yada, yada. She can't wait until she's 50 and then go enter the dating market and have the life and family and children and everything that she wants. Obviously. I mean, I guess Gordon Ramsay's wife just had their 5th or 6th kid. She's 49. Clearly, number one, that's like her 5th or 6th kid, and that's clearly an exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
A young woman who's 25 with no prospects is in a much worse spot than a young man who's 25 with no prospects. So if you're one of those guys, first of all, quit feeling sorry for yourself. You could have it worse. Next,
be patient.
If you are one of those guys, be patient and do something productive with yourself. Your responsibility as a man is to produce. Whether that is production in the sense of reproduction or production in the sense of generating value, that's your first and foremost responsibility. You need to begin producing that value and make yourself a valuable commodity. You're not valuable just because you're a man. Just because you have a dick and balls does not make you special. You're not entitled to anything just because of that. You have to use what's in those dick and balls to motivate yourself to be productive, to produce things of value. Start a business. If you don't want to start a business, you don't know how, go apprentice yourself to someone. Learn a skill. If you already have a degree and you're working some like coding job or or you're I don't know, some kind of software developer or accountant or whatever, then you need to teach yourself how to start a business. Go listen to Alex Hormozy.
Yeah, like, dude, we're over here trying to start a business with families and children and day jobs, and I wish I would have done this when I was working at McDonald's and sleeping in my car, 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I had nothing but me to worry about. You have it really good right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot harder to do when you have a million other responsibilities.
Right. And if you're not a single guy like that, if you actually have a family, then by God, man, you've got it even easier. Your purpose is very, very clear. It may be that you need to start a business too. Depends on where you're at, what you're doing. You may need to. We're moving into an era with a revival of entrepreneurship. We're a revival of the family business, which is really the family business was a form of entrepreneurship. You had the family member who started the business and then taught his kids, and his kids taught their kids, and their kids taught their kids, and so on. Eventually,
my grandfather was a cobbler, and his grandfather was a cobbler, and my father was a cobbler, and I'll be a cobbler, and damn it, my kids will be cobblers.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it used to work.
Then we entered the era of, the things split off. You get industrial revolution, you get the trades. You're apprenticed with these trades. Eventually, you start with the industrial revolution. You start getting corporations, you get companies, you get a 9-to-5 job, you get a retirement package. All that. That's all out the window. You can't keep sitting around bemoaning the loss of a world that should have never existed in the first place. All these things were all. It was a transitory stage of human experience that's behind us. That sort of world just isn't going to exist anymore. And if you're sitting around waiting for it to come back up again, if you're like, oh, we just need to get inflation to stabilize or something, and then everything will recover.
End the Fed. No. We just got to end the Fed.
Right. Yeah. No. You don't need to wait for the system to fix itself for you to be successful. You being successful is part of what will make the system fix itself. The system fixing itself looks like those within the system choosing to fix the system by being productive and innovative and creative. I think part of the reason why we're so lacking in things that generate awe is because there's so little actual innovation going on, at least in the eyes of most people. There's actually a lot of innovation happening. You just have to look for it. You just have to be aware of it. But a big problem is that these parasocial, political, ideological communities have captured the attention of so many young men and young women, but the young women follow the young men because women follow the men. That's just a fact of life. So if the young men are getting led astray by these grifting political units, they're naturally going to draw the women along with them. That's why your responsibility as a man is not to be led astray, because you being led astray has consequences for those who follow you, and you're responsible for those. But there's all kinds of communities you can still access on the internet that aren't completely given over to this hopeless, nihilistic, political, masturbatory charade. There are people who are learning valuable skills, teaching each other these valuable skills, and developing wealth and stability for themselves and their families. And they're making long-term plans. If you're someone who's if you're one of these guys that's kind of in this in-between stage, you don't really know what you're doing, and maybe you followed the political thing for a while. Maybe you were, I don't know, if maybe you were a DemSoc or you were a libertarian or whatever you were, but you've kind of become jaded and disenfranchised from those sorts of things. Like, this was us. We came through this libertarian thing, and then you had the LPMC, and we were like, this whole thing is transparent. It's just retarded. Why are you guys wasting your time on this? And it turns out, who was right? Who was right? Just how gay and retarded was the LPMC? It
Yep.
turns out it was extremely gay and retarded. I'll take the apology. You could say, yeah, you were right. Sorry, Matt, you were right. It was gay and retarded. I shouldn't have wasted my time and money on that. That's right. You shouldn't have. But what's done is done. Now, instead of wasting your time and money on some other gay little political thing that's been spun up to capture your attention, to suck you in and get you in this mimetic rivalry with someone, arguing and yelling with them. No, don't fall for the same trick with just like, it's like the same bag of bones. They just put them in a different order and they're trying to get you to follow it again. Don't follow it.
Mm-hmm.
Go do something productive with yourself.
Get out of the graveyard.
Yes. You used this analogy earlier. Could use Gehenna. You talked about Gehenna, which is essentially like the graveyard outside the city. Where all the bodies were in Gehenna. And it's used metaphorically as a reference to hell, to what we call hell. And it was like, so you have this Gehenna that's full of the bodies of the bones of all of these dead ideologies. Liberalism came through with its atomized individual bullshit that just absolutely corrosively destroys all the ties that bind a society together. It got everybody chasing after these fake paused ideologies.
Or worshiping themselves or the self.
Yes. Worshiping the demon called the individual. This notion of the atomized person who is owed rights by the world, who has no duties, exists here to complain about people violating rights, but has no positive obligation to anybody. It's like battery acid. It has just absolutely corroded all of the institutions in the society. Some of the worst offenders of this, it's like it reached its apotheosis in the idealistic, naive boomers, the credulous boomers who just believe whatever is on the TV. And in a similar way that the Zoomers were kind of a victim of the society they were brought into, the boomers were a victim of the society as well. A lot of them went on to just destroy it further. And there's kind of, it seems like we've talked about before about this, like it seems like a dialectic relationship between the Zoomers and the boomers.
Yeah.
And now is the time when the Zoomer generation, the Zoomer spirit, which if you want to, the Zoomer spirit isn't restricted entirely to the Zoomer generation. You've got proto-Zoomers like Sam Hyde, we've talked about as a great example of a proto-Zoomer, where you see in the earlier generations, you had the people who were starting to play with this nihilistic sort of meta spirit. Those are the structure of the future is going to depend on the way those people choose to act today, starting today. If you're a Zoomer, a millennial, late Gen X, somewhere who's kind of in this milieu, we're entering into and progressing through a time of great transition and change, where a lot of the structures that have been built up over a couple hundred years are falling apart. There's going to be a shift in power blocks. The institutions some are dissolving, new ones are being raised up. I'm convinced, as kind of an aside, that there's sort of an invisible vanguard behind the scenes right now, behind all of these boomers who are overstaying their welcome. As soon as all of these boomers die, which if you think about it, if boomer starts 1948 to 65, something like that, that means the youngest boomers right now are around 60. So if you think of like average lifespans, you think of average lifespans probably shortening, especially the events over the last 3 years. Within the next 10 years, virtually all of the boomers are going to die off, which means then there's a new cohort of people who can step into these governing positions. But there's kind of a backlog there right now. We don't know exactly what the I guess like the collective psychology of this new corpus of elites looks like. We don't know exactly what they value, but we can kind of make educated guesses. And if you're paying attention and you're proactive, if you keep listening to us, we'll keep telling you about this stuff. You can start to see the tea leaves. You can see where this is going to go. You can see the influences that are starting to rise up, and you can hitch your ride to those bandwagons in like an economic sense. You can begin to produce assets of your own. Give yourself a purpose. If you're a single guy right now who it's what's that feeling when no GF, if you are no GF right now, or if you're a guy who has a young family, but you're kind of dead-ended, you're not sure where you're going or what you're going to do, the next 10 or 15 years are just going to be, I can't overstate how important they're going to be. The choices that you start making today are going to determine whether this next period of transition is a time where you thrive and you accumulate assets, both social assets, physical assets, intellectual assets, the things that are going to be necessary for your grandchildren to thrive? Or are you going to spend the next 5 to 10 to 15 years just sitting around playing with the bones of dead ideologies and not going anywhere? There's a city. You don't need to sit in Gehenna. There's a city right here. Get out of the graveyard and get your ass up into the city and start building it. You can make expansions on the city. Start putting your imprint on it. Produce things of value for people. Start living for other people self-sacrificially. If you do that, then you'll begin to get that meaning in everything that you want, and the GF will follow at the right time.
The PayPal Mafia. That's exactly who we were thinking.
Uh-huh. PayPal Mafia. Oh, I like that. That's good. Random username says LPMC Victory Lap is now investing time in Dave's candidate, a former intelligence agency spook, a Jewish communist until a few years ago. They just can't help themselves. It's just like, if we aren't being a parody of our, if things aren't working, it's because we're not being enough of a parody of ourselves.
Well, you see, the former intelligence agency spook who was a Jewish communist he's like the repentant sinner. He's like the prodigal son.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he converted so he can teach everyone else how to convert too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's madness. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I invested time or energy into that worldview.
It's so gay.
It's so gay. That's the biggest thing. Is like, regardless of whether or not like you can feel purpose with it or feel like have a path forward or whatever, it just requires you to be so gay all the time. You have to say some of the dumbest, gayest things. If you're a libertarian, you have to say things like end the Fed. You say this and people are like, yeah, it just
violates the nap.
Yeah.
Who was that goofball that we used to argue with on Twitter? Is he still
Ace?
doing that? Oh, Ace, yeah. Is he still arguing with people about the nap?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I would be shocked if it ever changes. It was nothing has ever made me feel more like banging my head against pavement than trying to debate something with him. I lost so many hours of my life over that. But what's done is done. I can't get him back, so I guess I got to make the most of what's ahead of me. Slowboy Whiteboard said, Father Josiah Trenham said, if you want a wife, make a things I want in a wife list and then become all the good attributes on that list yourself, and God will bring you your wife. Bingo.
That's good advice. That's
fantastic advice. List all of the things that you want in a wife. If you don't have a wife, if you're the TFW no GF guy, make a list of the things you want in your prospective wife, and then put yourself to work changing those things. There's other things you should do on top of that as well. Like, you should be a guy who can provide for your family. You should be a guy who is in the physical shape that your kids are going to look up to and respect. You should be capable of, you should have the means for putting a roof over your kids' heads and putting food on their table consistently so they never have to be without it. They never have to worry about it. You should be capable of creating a peaceful, stress-free atmosphere for your family. If you're not in a position to do that, get there. That's your responsibility. If you can't do that right now, then you don't deserve a wife or a girlfriend. If you already have one, if you have a girlfriend and you're thinking of making her your wife, you got to get off your ass. You've got to be working at this constantly. This is your responsibility as a man. This is where
she's got plenty of other options.
Right. And if you are lagging behind, then I don't. As long as if you haven't put a ring on the finger, if you're lagging behind, then she's fair game, bro. You gotta step your game up.
Yep.
Because she deserves it. She deserves you being your best.
Or someone better than you.
Right. Right. One of my favorite quotes regarding the nap was Tommy Salmon saying, "The only violation of the nap is waking someone up." That's good. Should be using the Fed right now to be buying old bonds at a discount. Can pay off the national debt for half price off. See, like that's the sort of perspective you should have. Instead of the libertarian thing, which is sit here and scream about the economy and how everything's bad and sucks and is going to get worse. And how can you creatively use your ingenuity to learn how to capitalize on this problem? One of my favorite pastimes is listening to Alex Hormozy videos because of the mindset that he has. His mindset is not like, bemoaning how bad everything is. He's like, if things are bad, that's an opportunity. If someone's life sucks, that's an opportunity for you to do something to make their life not suck, and they will gladly pay a lot of money for that. If you can solve someone's problem, you have a right to ask for money in return for doing that. You can make a living solving other people's problems and having them pay you for it, and they will gladly do it. If you solve the problem, if you solve a big enough, persistent, severe enough problem, people will gladly pay you for it. If you're not being paid, say you're like, oh yeah, I'd love to buy these bonds, but like I can barely get groceries, man. Like, if you're not being paid, if you don't have money, that's because you haven't solved enough problems, or the problems that you have solved aren't big enough. So start solving problems. Come up with them. If you need ideas, if you want to start brainstorming on this sort of thing, please join the Kingpilled Discord. Go to subscribestar.com/Kingpilled, sign up, join the Discord, come in there and just tell us. Say, hey, I feel motivated. I want to do this. I want to start making something of myself. I'm tired of being a piece of shit that just sits around and kind of feels sorry for myself. If you're low on energy, if you feel like you don't have confidence, you'll believe me, once you get your teeth sunk in a problem, you start trying to solve these problems, it's going to give you energy. You're going to wake up in the morning thinking about it and trying to figure out ways to solve whatever the problem is you're trying to solve. That will solve your energy problem. If you feel sluggish and pointless, you're just kind of going through the motions, working a 9-to-5 or doing whatever you're doing, and you just don't feel like it matters, come join the Discord. We've got a great community of guys in there, and we'll help you come up with solutions. We will gladly do that. We have voice chats in there. It used to be all the time. Then it was kind of infrequently. Now it's becoming a lot more frequent. Having regular voice chats, talking about this sort of stuff, all kinds of things. Because to get back to the idea of tribe, like what's the difference between a tribe that is incarnational, that's alive, that is motivated toward a purpose that is real, what's the difference between that and the zombie tribe that's like the LPMC? The LPMC is a zombie tribe. It's dead. It has no life, but it's pretending to. And it's trying to bait you in, trying to get your energy to come give it life. It's parasitic. That's the differentiation. You have a tribe that's sucking energy from you into it. And those who are putting energy into it aren't getting anything out of it. Most commonly, it's going to be a select few of the people are the ones who are getting the most out of the tribe versus out of that zombie tribe versus a real tribe is one that you pouring into it refills you. The tribe functions as greater than the sum of its parts. The more you invest in the tribe, the more you get out of the tribe. The more each individual member invests in the tribe, the more they get out of it. This is the proper structure of a family. Starts with the father at the head and then the mother beside him and the children beneath them. And then their children eventually become fathers and mothers. Their children become fathers and mothers. You form a tribe. You start with a family, the fundamental unit, you become a tribe. And that tribe has an identity of their relationships to each other, their obligations to each other. They fulfill those obligations together for the sake of the tribe, and it makes the tribe grow. And all of them benefit from the growth of the tribe. Zoomers are really good at spinning up little pseudo communities. But as we enter the age of the Zoomers, it's time to start being really judicious about the types of communities we're invested in. Don't invest yourself in zombie tribes that are parasites, that suck energy out of you, that leave you worse off than you were when you first invested in them. Start finding a tribe, tribes or a tribe that you can invest in that will generate a return for you and for everyone else in the tribe. Find a tribe that you can invest in to better the lives of the other members in the tribe, and you get better because of it. If you don't have one, what's that?
Quit gooning.
And quit gooning, yeah. Yeah, don't blow that energy. You need to keep that energy and channel it into something other than gooning.
Yeah, blow that energy into our tribe.
Yeah, blow that energy into our tribe, not a Kleenex. If you need a tribe, if you don't have one, if you're some lonely guy on the internet who doesn't really know anybody, doesn't know where to start, you just want some company, you just want productive, constructive company, join the King Pill Discord. You get started there. And we can point you in other directions. We can help you. Advice, business advice, life advice, health and fitness advice. If you don't like the way you look, if maybe part of the reason why you're lonely is because you don't ever want to see anybody because you're embarrassed. Either you're too much of a twink or you're too much of a fat slob. You just hate the way that you look. We can help you with that as well. We have a proven 6-week protocol that's going to make you look better, feel better, and perform better, and you're going to start to get your confidence back. We will help you with that because we want to see you become a better person. And sometimes for some people, that's what you have to start with. Maybe you don't have the energy, you don't have the clarity of mind, you're too distracted by being in pain all the time, something like this. If that's you and you're like, I don't even have the bandwidth, it takes me hours to get myself functional in the morning. I can't wait to just fall into bed at night. I don't have any energy. There's no way. I don't have the bandwidth to try to come up with something creative. I don't have the bandwidth to be creative or productive. This is an attitude of death. This is despair and defeat. You don't have time to be desperate and defeated. Don't despair. Don't black pill. Just invest yourself in something that's going to make you better. And that could be that you need to get yourself in shape. You need to get your body working for you instead of against you. Once you start doing that, you'll actually, as you begin to increase your metabolism, as you increase your metabolic activity, you increase your own capacity for productivity.
And you get an objective metric for self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I was at this point. This is where I am now. Number went up.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good kind of number went up.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get your trajectory. You can begin, instead of looking at yourself as like your, how would you say this? Like your position on the line. You look at yourself as what is your trajectory? Is my trajectory up? Am I improving steadily every day? Because if you are, it doesn't matter if you're at the bottom of the curve. If you're way down here, you're just getting started, but you've got this sharp upward trajectory, you're better off than the guy who's ahead of you, but who's on his way down. Start thinking about yourself in terms of your trajectory each day. Did I do a little bit more today than yesterday? Am I a little bit better off today than I was yesterday?
And can be as little as 20, 30 minutes a week of working out. Doesn't take, it's a lot simpler than you think.
Anyways, is there anything we didn't touch on today? Trying to run through all the.
Well, I have some other ideas, but I'll save them for another episode. I'm about spent.
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 hours.
Slow down.
Yep. All right. 2-Bit says libertine totalitarianism is where we're at the moment, but it's too retarded to survive. Yeah. That's the bitter white pill. That's bitter white pill is one of the best thought nuggets that I've encountered recently. Shout out to 2-Bit, Jason at the 2-Bit podcast for that one. A bitter white pill. You got to take the bitter white pill. There was a bitter white pill we were talking about just before we got off the phone earlier, Cooper. Do you remember what it was? It was something in the context of guys being patient and
being patient that, the GF will come. It might just be 10 or 15 years out.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was.
That's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was something else.
And it'll be, and if it is 10 or 15 years out, then think about it this way. You'll have the girlfriend when you are objectively better than you are now. So you'll get the time you get to spend with the girlfriend will be better, objectively better than it would be now. You're not just going to commiserate and embarrass and humiliate yourself in front of her. You don't have to be a depressed slug in front of your dream woman. You actually get the opportunity to make something of yourself before you introduce yourself to her. It's kind of like if you were in prior eras, if you were like, 10, well, you wouldn't want to meet your future wife when you were 10. Like imagine your future wife somehow going back in time and seeing you at 10. You'd be like, oh my God, it's just, so embarrassing. Well, that's where you are now. Your development is stunted. This is a reality of the era that you live in. You didn't get to develop and mature in a healthy way, the way previous generations may have. You just got to lean into it. There's nothing you can do about it now. You've got to start progressing that development trajectory now. You may be an adult, but you need to become a parent. It is a parent that you need to be a parent. So you need to put yourself in the position where you're capable of being a good parent. And if you're already a parent and you're not a good enough parent, then you need to make yourself a better parent. That's your purpose. Again, we're defined by our relationships. Our identity is found in our relationships and the quality of that relationship, both for us on the receiving end and for us on the giving end. All right. Well, this was another impromptu stream. We've gone almost 2 hours, so I think we did pretty good. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us jabber. You can follow us. I'm on Twitter at Real King Pilled, Instagram at Real King Pilled, and I think just King Pilled on TikTok. We're posting clips there, and I'm going to start posting some of my own independent content. You can also follow Cooper on Twitter at Cooper Brooks. And then if you want to talk to us personally, hang out, chill, have a good time, post in the meme thread, and just they say that you are the sum of, or you are the average of the top 5 people you spend the most time around. So in the King Pill Discord, we've got some awesome people. So you should come improve your average by spending time with us there. If you want to do that, it's subscribestar.com/kingpilled. And
Yeah, improve your average and lower ours.
Right, exactly. We'll meet in the middle. What time is it? 20 to 9. I'll be in there here in a little bit. Maybe not immediately when we get off, but shortly after that, I will be hopping in the Discord and jumping on the voice chat for anybody who wants to chat. So if you want to talk personally to us, Cooper, you want to join the voice chat, or are you going to go to bed?
No, I'll hang out for a little bit. Go smoke a bag.
Sounds good. So if you want to join us and talk to us directly, then you can go sign up right now, subscribestar.com/kingpilled. That'll get you into the Discord, and we will see you there. Have a good one, guys.